By day and homeless by night.
It's a way of life for some people in Fort Myers.
You really don't know what it's like until you're out here.
Wing News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur hit the streets to find out why more isn't being done to help them. She's live in downtown with the story. So Celine, how many people live like this?
Well, Russ, no local agency or organization tracks that information, so no one knows how many working homeless live in Fort Myers or Lee County. However, I do have a statistic that may shed some light on the problem. Lee County Human and Veterans Services says when people first sign up for services, they are asked, do you have any employment income? Well, in 2020, about 24% said yes. That's 550 people. So who are they? Well, I go out with a Fort Myers police officer who's on the homeless outreach team to find out.
It's 6:30 a.m. Officer Ryan Biner gets ready to make his rounds to check on the homeless.
I'm on scene, that contact person.
So I'm driving around looking for individuals early in the morning that are probably sleeping on people's property, sleeping at churches, sleeping in front of businesses, sleeping at libraries, sleeping in parks.
We saw what you might expect. People wrapped up in blankets without basics like clothes.
Do you need shoes?
Food.
Do you need anything right now?
Yeah, something to eat.
Yeah, I have something I can give you to eat.
And medical care.
You want a new bandage? I can do that for you, yeah. It's not a problem. Hello at the camp.
What we didn't expect to see is this. Clean clothes lined up on a rack at a homeless camp in the middle of the woods. It begs the question, who lives here and what's their story?
In Fort Myers, I mean, you can see a gentleman walking down the street downtown who's got saggy, dirty pants and dirty shirt and, you know, obviously looks like he is down on his luck. Or you can see a person that's, you know, well tailored in a nice dress shirt and slacks and has been living out of their car for the last 3 months. I mean, it could be your neighbor, it could be, you know, somebody that you work with, it could be a friend, and you would never know.
I'm Ryan, by the way, man.
Brent.
Nice to meet you, Brent.
Mr. Grayson.
That includes Brent Grayson. We met him at the Edison Mall transfer station. Grayson tells me he doesn't want people to know he's living on the streets simply based on how he's dressed.
I said it's your appearance. It's on how you look, and that's when you start getting judged, and then people start treating you way different.
Grayson says he spent a lot of money applying for apartments, but doesn't clear the background checks because of his criminal record.
I ain't gonna lie, I've been down here a little over 12 years, been in that place 19 times. I lost my house, I lost everything.
But he did find a job.
A blind man can do this job. I work at right downtown, Oasis.
He just happened to stroll in here and said, I really, really need a job.
Samantha Merritt says she couldn't turn him away.
His story was just very, like, I'm crying while I'm interviewing him, you know, just, it was heart-wrenching. So he said, I'll do anything, I'll take any hours. And honestly, the workforce is a little rough right now. So it's beneficial for both parties. There's a misconception that, you know, homeless people don't want to work. They don't want to have things. They do.
You really don't know what it's like to be out there. That's what August said. So don't judge us for what we do or why we out here on the streets. Just understand that it can happen to you.
Mac is homeless, has been for 7 years. When he's not perched in his familiar spot, he works at the Luminary Hotel.
I'm a dishwasher, and I also help maintain all the equipment there and sanitize everything because of COVID-19.
Mac wants a place close to work, but can't find one he can afford.
Oh, it's very bad. I mean, just to get a one-bedroom apartment is like $800, almost close to $1,000.
In the meantime, he's making do in the kitchen and on the streets.
To be homeless and be able to go to work every day.
That's the easy part. All you gotta do is wake up and go. But I see some up here that's just out here just laying around not doing nothing. And then they expect things to happen for them. It's not gonna happen that way. You gotta get off your butt and work for it.
The Luminary Hotel declined to talk to us about Mac and tell us if they have other homeless people on staff. In the meantime, Biner continues his patrols.
Good.
Helping one homeless person at a time and encouraging them to help themselves.
Officer Biner tells me he interacts with 35 to 45 new homeless people every month, and that's on top of the people he already communicates with. Now, coming up at 5:30, I sit down with Mayor Anderson. He watches our story and he weighs in, and we want you to weigh in too. Email me at celine.macarthur@winknews.com or leave us a message on our Wink Facebook page. Live in Fort Myers, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur, Wink News Now.
Celine, such an important issue, especially when it comes to affordable housing. The price of housing in Fort Myers all across Southwest Florida has really shot up recently, and that's a major concern for these people who are trying to get their lives back together. They want to work and they want things.
Yeah, and I think it's so important too that Celine shared that message there, because you see all these people out and you don't know the story behind each person, like those two people. So, you know, it's great that you're sharing that message for them. And also thank you to the Oasis restaurant and also the Luminary for, you know, giving them jobs. So,
yeah, and like that woman said, there's misconception that none of the homeless want to work. Clearly some do, and those folks did, and we wish them all the best, and hopefully they can find a home soon.
First at 5:30, what happens when a working wage isn't a living wage? Hello again, everyone. I'm Chris Safati.
And I'm Lois Tomey. For some, they become part of a growing population known as the working homeless. Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur is live at Lions Park in Fort Myers to continue our coverage. And Celine, you have reaction from the mayor to what you've uncovered so far?
I do, Lois. Mayor Anderson calls them the hidden homeless. He says that's in part because you won't see them en masse in public spaces like Lions Park. The city removed them so young kids can enjoy the space. They're also the hidden homeless because when they're at work, they're often behind closed doors, like in kitchens, in restaurants, and local hotels. But the mayor admits their stories have to be told if there's going to be any change.
Willie Joe says he knows where to go when it's time to settle down for the night.
I've been on the street, I don't know, since I've been down to 2009.
But with mental and physical health issues and his whole life packed into bags, he struggles to find work.
If you're carrying everything you own, how are you gonna, where are you gonna put it? You know, jobs ain't you don't want that.
I'm Ryan, by the way, man.
Brent.
Nice to meet you, Brent.
Mr. Grayson.
Brent Grayson is also homeless, but refuses to let that weigh him down.
I can be the pop, but I'm not acting the pop.
A blind man can do this job.
During the day, Grayson works in the kitchen at the Oasis restaurant.
Where do you stay at night?
Where'd I stay at? I hate to. I'll go behind a building. I'll go in the woods. I do not go in abandoned buildings. I don't go in empty houses.
Mac is also part of the homeless workforce. He says his job as a kitchen steward at the Luminary Hotel gives him a sense of freedom.
I got nobody over my shoulder. They basically let you do what you want to do as long as you're doing your job.
But the job doesn't pay enough to rent an apartment.
But the city do got to do more about the homeless out here. So I've been out here for 7 years. I have not seen nothing change in the homeless population down here whatsoever. No change.
I asked Fort Myers Mayor Kevin Anderson to watch our coverage and weigh in.
It just reinforces to me how complex this problem is. People see a homeless person on the street and they can form an opinion or a judgment. And in most cases, they're going to be wrong. Not everyone is on the street by choice. Not everyone's there because they're lazy and they won't work.
He doesn't think the cost of living in Southwest Florida will go down anytime soon.
We can't build or buy enough facilities to hold or house homeless. If we got a 100-room motel, we would fill it up and we'd be in need of another one.
The mayor thinks that can be done through training for higher paying jobs.
Education usually equates to opportunity. If you have low skill sets, you're only going to get so much money. I mean, that's the way the market works.
He also points to transitional housing offered in the city and wonders why Grayson and Mac aren't living there.
Why have they not been housed? So there may be special circumstances which prevents that. I don't know the intricacies of their cases. I can tell you one of the first things I'm going to do is reach out. I know Ryan, and I'm going to reach out to him and say, hey, what's up with those guys, and what have we done to try and get them housing?
Brent Grayson didn't know his options until Officer Ryan Biner with the city's housing outreach team told him about it when they met on the streets.
With that situation that you're in right now, though, it's kind of the perfect opportunity for the homeless prevention application. What that does is it'll give you, if you're approved for it, it'll assist you with the application fees for finding an apartment. It'll assist you with first and last month's rent.
See, that's basically it. That's all we need.
Now, Mac didn't want that help. Grayson did, so he's now in the system, and we will follow his progress.
It's become a story that makes you think. How can you be employed and not be able to put a roof over your head? But the working homeless are out there, working by day and living on our streets by night. Wake News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur has been digging into this hidden workforce to find out why there's no specific plan or playbook to help them. She's live now to share what she's been uncovering. Celine.
Well, Chris, there is the housing crisis, there's the homeless crisis, and there's the workforce crisis. All three independently get a lot of attention, but there's a group that fits into all three categories at once. It's the working homeless, and they are largely overlooked. So I asked stakeholders and experts why it's a problem here and whose job it is to fix it.
Reverend William Glover fights for affordable housing in Fort Myers and keeps up with nearly every move City Council makes.
There's a moral responsibility to make certain that housing is available, especially to people who are contributing to the tax base of communities.
I showed him our investigation. He watched two men, Mac and Grayson, share their stories of how they manage work and life on the streets because they can't afford their own places. Glover says this is an eye-opener.
I think it is one of the most accurate portrayal of a segment of the homeless whose stories are not told. There's a systemic injustice at work in terms of why working people who pay taxes cannot afford a place to live.
Florida Gulf Coast University professor Thomas Felke gets emotional as he watches our video of a rack of clean clothes in a makeshift camp in the woods.
And I'm choking up a little bit. Because you get to this point of, people figuring out how to survive.
Executive Director of the National Coalition for the Homeless, Donald Whitehead, calls their stories crushing.
You've just demonstrated in your research that, people are out there working every day. It's not about people being lazy. It's about people working as hard as they can in the best job they're able to get based on their education and economic conditions, and still not to be able to afford a place to live.
Mayor Kevin Anderson says our investigation reinforces how complex the problem is.
If you have low skill sets, you're only going to get so much money. I mean, that's the way the market works.
And Professor Felke adds it doesn't help that Southwest Florida doesn't have a wide range of high-paying jobs.
We're primarily a service-driven, retail-driven industry. You don't have a lot of high wages in those fields.
So how much of our workforce is homeless?
I'm trying to get a sense of how many there might be, and nobody collects that data.
It's hard to collect. By nature, they're transient.
The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development does require communities to conduct point-in-time or pit counts of the homeless. The next one takes place next month. But Felke admits it has its limitations when it comes to counting the working homeless.
Pit counts are held usually during the early morning, daytime hours. That's when these individuals, because they're working, they're at work. So they're getting missed in the count.
Whitehead says no clear count leads to no clear plan to effectively address the issue.
And that's why we continue to see homelessness grow, because we don't have a solution that's to the scale of the problem.
There's also no consensus on exactly who is responsible for coming up with that solution.
People feel that the burden of this problem should fall squarely on the shoulders of local government and the taxpayer. Here's a harsh reality. It's not government's obligation to feed, clothe, or house people. Now, with that being said, that does not mean we can't be involved and participate some way in trying to address this problem.
It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. Government is going to be in there. We need to have nonprofits in there because those are the ones doing the boots-on-the-ground work. We need industry. We need workforce. So how to engage that at the table, I think, is really important. That's probably the piece that we're missing the most right now.
It takes a person or a group of people or a problem solver like yourself to give people some hope and get them moving back in the right direction.
That includes Mac.
So I've been out here for 7 years. I have not seen nothing change in the homeless population down here whatsoever. No change.
And Mac says he wants leaders to address affordable housing right now. As of this week, there is a wait list, 548 people or families waiting for permanent housing. Now, as we continue to investigate, we want to hear from you. So email us at investigations@winknews.com. Live in Fort Myers, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur, Wink News Now.
Why don't these people just get jobs so they can get off the streets? That's a typical question that people ask when they see the homeless.
But the solution to homelessness isn't that simple. As we first told you in our special series, The Working Homeless, there are people in our community who work in local businesses by day and live on the streets at night. Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur has reaction to our investigation from state lawmakers.
We ask lawmakers, Democrat and Republican, to watch and weigh in. Both agree something needs to be done for the homeless, particularly the working homeless.
The folks who have the best chance of fully reintegrating into society are the working homeless that you showcase. I mean, they're demonstrating that they have some skills and some ability to get an entry-level job, and they're showing up to work on time. They're working hard.
But the wages are low, combined with the fact that affordable housing is sometimes totally unattainable in Florida, and that's left them with a very frustrating and desperate situation, which is why it's important for local and state government to continue to put forward solutions.
Neither State Representative Spencer Roach nor Carlos Guillermo Smith are currently working on legislation that specifically address the working homeless. However, there are homeless assistance programs in Lee County. We take a closer look to see what works and what needs work.
57-year-old Brent Grayson says his job in the kitchen at the Oasis restaurant in Fort Myers brings him one step closer to getting his life back on track.
I feel like I'm getting a second chance now.
But his job isn't helping him get a roof over his head. Despite the steady paycheck, he can't find a place to live.
How much do you think you can afford a month for an apartment?
I can afford. Me personally, myself, about $800–900.
But as a non-violent convicted felon, Grayson says he fails the background checks at apartment complexes.
I've been. I called rooming houses. I've called hotel rooms, like weeklies, monthlies booked.
So it's back to the streets until his next shift.
I try to go there where I know I'm safe, and I just lay my head, and I put cardboard down. I put a comforter. I lay on the comforter. I got a pillow, and then I got a blanket, and then I fold everything up in the morning.
Life as the working homeless is a struggle. Grayson feels it's dangerous and demoralizing.
I get frustrated because I look at other people, and you know, they go home, the loved ones, family, and then I'm like, I just walk around and I start thinking, I said, man, I wish I was in that predicament.
In early December, when we first met Grayson, Fort Myers police officer Ryan Biner with the homeless outreach team offered him a potential lifeline.
With that situation that you're in right now, though, it's kind of a perfect opportunity for the homeless prevention application.
On December 16th, Biner signed Grayson up for housing assistance from Lee County Human and Veteran Services. Days passed, then weeks, and no word if or when that help is coming.
Nobody has called me. Nobody has even attempted to email me. I check every day, all day. The only one that I get from is you. Wink News.
Have faith, have hope, have trust in the network.
The executive director of Lee County Human and Veteran Services, Roger Mercado, says the homeless also need to be patient since there are more than 500 people on the wait list for housing.
But on average, we're looking probably from the time they enter coordinated entry and get into housing, on average, it's about 70 days.
It's a long time on the street.
It is.
And the services are not first come, first served.
They will assess the situation and look at certain vulnerabilities of that household.
Grayson hopes his small victories, like finding and keeping a job, doesn't keep him at the back of the helpline for too long.
I can't give up. You know what I'm saying? I can't give up. I can't do it.
Mercado says he's willing to let us follow Grayson through the process of getting housing. And you can follow his journey, and you can join in on the conversation on the Wink News app and on our Facebook page. In Fort Myers, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur, Wink News Now.
Well, if you have a story that you'd like Celine or the rest of our team to investigate, send an email to investigations@winknews.com.
Working homeless in Lee County connect to public services to help get them back on their feet. Welcome back. I'm Russ McCaskey.
And I'm Nicole Gabe. Is the system too challenging for them to navigate, ultimately setting them up for failure? Well, more community leaders weigh in on those questions, those two questions, as Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur continues to follow one man's journey to housing.
It's week 7 since Brent Grayson signed up for public homeless assistance in Lee County. He worked and waited through the holidays, the tornadoes.
The storm was kind of ugly because, you know, being out here, you got to find something basically to cover your head. I was a little wet, but hey, I went to work.
He also weathered near record cold, not knowing when he'd get the help Lee County says it provides the homeless to get into places of their own.
I get frustrated on the inside, but I said, hey, my day's going to come.
A week ago, Brent says his case manager, who forwarded our requests for an interview to her boss, told him he qualified for rental vouchers to pay for upfront costs, including first month, last month, and security deposit. He's still waiting on the county to help him convince a landlord to take in a convicted felon.
A lot of places are rejecting me. They're not accepting me.
I'm a person with a felony conviction. We call ourselves returning citizens. So I know those barriers firsthand.
That's Deputy Director of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, Neil Volz. He feels Lee County's homeless assistance services need work, and Grayson's experience proves it.
It's because he has some challenges to navigate the system that we should hear his voice and hear his experiences so that we can create a system that isn't just geared towards one segment of the population. This reminds me of the tornado we just had. You know, when we see that, we see another person in pain, like we run up to them and we want to help them. We don't say like, hey, do you have a past felony conviction?
We should do all that we can to help, such as what you're doing now. You're raising the visibility of how people are living in our great country, a land of abundance.
As an African American who's also a convicted felon and once homeless, the president of the Lee County NAACP says he can relate to Grayson's situation. But James Muwakil says county commissioners can't say the same.
They don't understand that it's easier for a family to get help being homeless than it is for an individual by himself, especially a black male.
County Commissioner Brian Hammond tells me there are plenty of services for the working homeless, including here at the Salvation Army Resource Day Center. All of our requests to the Salvation Army to talk about Grayson or the working homeless in general, denied. Hammond also doesn't think we should be allowed to follow Brent Grayson step by step through the process, despite Grayson giving his permission.
Why is that though? But it's me and I'm giving you permission though.
The experts tell me that they don't believe it's in any client's best interest to break that confidentiality and to put those conversations on television.
The county also denied us access to outreach workers or case managers not related to Grayson's case. We were turned down by the county.
Well,
and that's
you know,
unfortunate.
sometimes you got to keep digging.
Grayson agrees.
That's very important to let people know what's really going on and ask these questions.
The people closest to the pain, closest to the problem, are usually closest to the solution.
He has to fight, okay? If he's not getting anywhere, that's taxpayer dollars.
We will continue to push for access so you can see what works and what doesn't work when it comes to homeless assistance in Lee County. And while we investigate, lawmakers are working on legislation to help convicted felons get into apartments and into fields where they need occupational licenses. You can read all about it on Wink News app and winknews.com. In the newsroom, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur, Wink News Now.
Well, now this morning, because of you, our great viewers, this man who you see right here woke up in a bed this morning.
As we've been reporting in our special investigation, the working homeless, he has a job, but he cannot afford a place to live. Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur shows us how our community is stepping in while he is waiting for public homeless assistance in Lee County.
Some drop off cards at his work.
I don't want to cry for you.
The kind words and cash tucked inside are not lost on Grayson.
Brent, you don't know me, but I know your story. My brother lived much of his life on the streets. Los Angeles, and I truly felt for you. You will be on my thoughts and my prayers. Yeah.
After watching our latest report, where Grayson talks about the grueling, weeks-long wait for any help or guidance from Lee County Human and Veteran Services.
Nobody has called me. Nobody has even attempted to email me. I check every day.
The manager of a local hotel reached out to help, saying she wants to be part of the solution.
There's a problem here in Fort Myers. There's individuals are working, some are working 7 days a week and they can't afford rent. I didn't want anyone to be carrying their belongings to work and storing everything they needed behind where they work. And it was your reporting that brought us to this situation, that brought us to where we are now.
She says she's working to provide Grayson a night job and some housing until he gets the help he needs from the county.
I feel more secure. I feel more safe now, you know, and then I feel, personally, I feel that getting off the streets is going to make like a big impact in my life.
Grayson says he also had his first one-on-one conversation with his assigned homeless outreach worker named Ashley. Fort Myers police officer Ryan Binder explains how that works.
The outreach worker goes back out, makes contact with them again, speaks to them, tells them, you know, how they can help, what needs to be done, kind of picks out the last couple years of their life and tries to determine the right course of action for them, and then it'll be going to the case manager, and then that case manager will kind of keep with them the rest of the way.
The timeline for this next step is unclear.
You signed him up for services
right
on December 16th.
Yeah.
It's the 5th
yep.
of January. That's a long time, isn't it, to be on the streets?
And it is a long time, but you have to understand as well that we're talking about thousands of people. One person might wait a month, but that's because 1,000 people, almost 2,000 people, are being assisted within Lee County.
Grayson says he's taking it one day at a time, but his goals are now clearly in sight. A home and a community to call his own.
I want to be in my own place where I have a key, going in my apartment, seeing my nice neighbors, hi, good morning, and watching them walk their dogs around, you know? One of them type of areas. That's what I want.
Now, to be clear, his temporary housing and his new job offer did not come from Lee County Human and Veteran Services. That was a private business that came forward to help him. Now, as of this morning, there's no telling when the county is going to be able to help get him his own apartment. The executive director tells me it takes an average of 70 days from when they're registered into the system, and this is day 21 for
Wow,
Grayson.
that's a lot of time for Grayson.
It is.
You know, Celine, to be frank here, sometimes when we're doing stories and there's not direct impact for the entire community, we worry, is it going to resonate? But that is really not the case with what you've seen with Grayson's story.
No, it proves that people do care when they're informed about what is and what is not going on in their community, and that's why they came forward.
Excellent report.
Now, it's important because I'm getting a lot of emails, a lot of messages. In fact, I got an email this morning from a mother who says she and her husband and their 5-year-old are living out of their car in Cape Coral, and they both work. So I just want to make sure that we put this number up a lot. It is the Homeless Coalition's coordinated entry. This is the first stop, and the number is 239-533-7996. We also have that on the Wink News app.
All right, Celine
and we'll keep
MacArthur.
following.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. And you can see the entire series on the Wink News app and on winknews.com.
Wink News takes our special report, The Working Homeless, to Lee County Commissioners to find out exactly what's being done to help those in need.
After weeks of ignoring or turning down our requests for information and interviews, investigative reporter Celine MacArthur approaches commissioners all at once to find out what they know about the process to get the homeless off the streets.
County commissioners meet here twice a month on Tuesday mornings. And since they didn't respond to my requests to talk about the working homeless in Lee County, I brought my questions to them.
Well, the working homeless tell me that they feel like they're in the dark, literally and figuratively, when it comes to the process. And they can't trust a process that they can't see. We're in the middle of a housing crisis, a homeless crisis, and a workforce crisis. So what challenges do these workers have in helping the working homeless? Also, how can the county demonstrate proof of performance? How can the public see that the work is being done?
The county manager, the staff works for him. You could contact the county manager for that. At this time, we just have no discussion. We just have public comment. So thank you.
While we wait for reaction from the county manager, in December, the executive director of Human and Veteran Services gave us permission to follow 57-year-old Brent Grayson's journey step by step because he said our continuing coverage could help our community.
And we appreciate the opportunity because it would be great to see him along that journey to see what the end result is, which hopefully involves no longer being underemployed and housing.
For weeks after that interview, we couldn't get any new details from them about Grayson's case. Instead, I got emails delaying our work. Would it be possible to follow up with us next week? We'll be back with you when we have information to share with you. Those delays turned into no's with, quote, we treat cases with confidentiality, as do our partnering agencies. At this point, we do not foresee providing detailed or further information about Mr. Grayson specifically. And, quote, our outreach worker is declining your interview request. But did she really? That's not what she told Grayson in one of her most recent calls with him.
I did want to discuss with you Wink News. So I have nothing to do with that. And I'm working for you. I can't talk to them. I'm not allowed to share anything about you with them or anything like that. So I just want to set a clear line.
Why is that though? But it's me and I'm giving you permission though.
No, I understand. I don't have permission from my employer.
In that call, she did tell Grayson he's now a priority, thanks in part to Wink News.
I don't have an exact date of how long it could take, but you are on the radar as far as my supervisor because of Wink News and you advocating for yourself. So I imagine it won't be too long.
The lack of transparency by Lee County leaders is disappointing, but not surprising to Florida Gulf Coast University professor Tom Felke.
Unfortunately, there are higher-ups to answer to, and if those higher-ups say this is what the answer is, then that's what everyone else has to abide by. I think that's a shame, but I know for a fact it's the reality.
In the meantime, nearly 5 weeks after Grayson signed up for public assistance through the county's coordinated entry system, Grayson still works 6 days a week at the Oasis restaurant by day and walks the streets and sleeps in the woods at night.
I take this is where I kind of like rest my head. You know what I'm saying? I take a couple pieces of cardboard. I'll just lay them. You know what I'm saying? Lay them down and stuff. Simple and basic. I put cardboard down. I got a blanket hidden over here somewhere, and I'll go grab my blanket and I'll just go lay down.
And back to work with still no idea when he'll get off the streets. Celine MacArthur, Wink News Now.
How many homeless people live in Lee County? Right now, Lee County Homeless Coalition is spearheading a head count to find out. Welcome back. I'm Russ McCaskey.
And I'm Nicole Gabe. It's all part of a nationwide mandate, and it happens during the last 10 days of January every year. Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur shows you how it's done in Lee County, where the information go, and what happens with that data.
The point of the PIC count, or the point in time count, is to track down every homeless person inside a shelter and out to see how big the problem is right now and why. Well, the feds use that data to figure out how much money local organizations are going to get moving forward. Now, this is a huge undertaking and requires a lot of volunteers, including students at FGCU.
24-year-old Crystal Jean is a first-year student in the social work program at Florida Gulf Coast University. She says she knew as a kid she wanted to be a social worker.
I had a social worker as a child, and she really did impact me greatly as a kid, and I didn't realize that she was a social worker, but I knew I wanted to do what she did, so I kind of just did some research and put two and two together.
The issue of homelessness is also personal. She recently discovered her father had become homeless.
I was shocked. I was very shocked. I didn't know. He didn't look it. You couldn't tell. He was homeless in a different part of Florida, and he came here to our family, and we didn't realize all the situation that was going on at the time.
But she knew what needed to happen next.
They're normal people who need help and need love and need services.
Now that that land is being developed, we are seeing more visibility of homelessness.
Professor Tom Felke feels the homeless situation in Southwest Florida is getting worse.
The other thing that concerns me is I'm worried about what the public reaction to visible homelessness is going to look like. People generally don't want to see things that make them uncomfortable. I mean, that makes sense. This is not something you can just push back into the shadows. This is something that actually needs to be addressed.
That has Jean wondering.
I think that our public offices are probably not doing enough. Someone is a convicted felon, for example. What are we doing to provide resources for these people to be reintegrated in society and for them to have the appropriate literacy skills to have a job or to have housing services?
So she hit the streets to learn more as a volunteer. On this morning, there aren't many homeless in her designated area, which surrounds the downtown Fort Myers Library.
I'm a little sad about it. I really am, because I really did want to, speak to some people and, get to know their story.
We caught up with Fort Myers police officer Ryan Biner, who's on the homeless outreach team, to find out why that might be.
It depends on the weather. It depends on the day. People have been moving around lately a lot, going to new places due to enforcement measures.
Jean did get to spend some time with Biner to get a snapshot of how he works with the homeless.
Going back into the places where some of these individuals sleep, and that just really it's hard not to cry about it, because it's just, I didn't know that was the type of conditions that some of these individuals actually have. These are their everyday lives.
While brief, it's a career experience she won't soon forget.
He's actually been in the field. What I'm learning about, he's done it for years. And just seeing that we have officers that are actually trying to help our communities. A social worker in disguise as an officer. So I thought he seems really cool.
This is just day 1 of 3 days here for the Lee County Pick Count. And as soon as we get our hands on that data, we're going to share it with you on the air, online, and on the Wink News app. In Fort Myers, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur. Wink News now.
Working homeless in Lee County connect to public services to help get them back on their feet. Welcome back. I'm Russ McCaskey.
And I'm Nicole Gabe. Is the system too challenging for them to navigate, ultimately setting them up for failure? Well, more community leaders weigh in on those two questions, as Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur continues to follow one man's journey to housing.
It's week 7 since Brent Grayson signed up for public homeless assistance in Lee County. He worked and waited through the holidays, the tornadoes.
The storm was kind of ugly because, being out here, you got to find something, basically, to cover your head. I was a little wet, but hey, I went to work.
He also weathered near-record cold, not knowing when he'd get the help Lee County says it provides the homeless to get into places of their own.
I get frustrated on the inside, but I said, hey, my day's going to come.
A week ago, Brent says his case manager, who forwarded our requests for an interview to her boss, told him he qualified for rental vouchers to pay for upfront costs, including first month, last month, and security deposit. He's still waiting on the county to help him convince a landlord to take in a convicted felon.
A lot of places are rejecting me. They're not accepting me.
I'm a person with a felony conviction. We call ourselves returning citizens. So I know those barriers firsthand.
That's Deputy Director of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, Neil Volz. He feels Lee County's homeless assistance services need work, and Grayson's experience proves it.
It's because he has some challenges to navigate the system that we should hear his voice and hear his experiences so that we can create a system that isn't just geared towards one segment of the population. This reminds me of the tornado we just had. When we see that, we see another person in pain, we run up to them and we want to help them. We don't say hey, do you have a past felony conviction?
We should do all that we can to help, such as what you're doing now. You're raising the visibility of how people are living in our great country, a land of abundance.
As an African American who's also a convicted felon and once homeless, the president of the Lee County NAACP says he can relate to Grayson's situation. But James Muwakil says county commissioners can't say the same.
They don't understand that it's easier for a family to get help being homeless than it is for an individual by himself, especially a black male.
County Commissioner Brian Hammond tells me there are plenty of services for the working homeless, including here at the Salvation Army Resource Day Center. All of our requests to the Salvation Army to talk about Grayson or the working homeless in general, denied. Hammond also doesn't think we should be allowed to follow Brent Grayson step by step through the process, despite Grayson giving his permission.
Why is that though? But it's me, and I'm giving you permission though.
The experts tell me that they don't believe it's in any client's best interest to break that confidentiality and to put those conversations on television.
The county also denied us access to outreach workers or case managers not related to Grayson's case. We were turned down by the county.
Well,
and that's unfortunate.
Sometimes you got to keep digging.
Grayson agrees.
That's very important to let people know what's really going on and ask these questions.
The people closest to the pain, closest to the problem, are usually closest to the solution.
He has to fight, okay? If he's not getting anywhere, that's taxpayer dollars.
We will continue to push for access so you can see what works and what doesn't work when it comes to homeless assistance in Lee County. And while we investigate, lawmakers are working on legislation to help convicted felons get into apartments and into fields where they need occupational licenses. You can read all about it on Wink News app and winknews.com. In the newsroom, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur, Wink News Now.
We've never been a nation that has given up on our own people. And to me, that's the most important thing.
From homeless to housed. After nearly 2 months in the pipeline for public housing help in Lee County, a Fort Myers man has a roof over his head.
Wink News investigative reporter Celine MacArthur shows you who helped this Fort Myers man and how in our special series, The Working Homeless.
Our special report, The Working Homeless, began right here at the bus station at the Edison Mall back on December 2nd. That's the day we first met Brent Grayson. He didn't look homeless, and he quickly explained why.
I can be the pop, but I'm not acting the pop.
Grayson works here at the Oasis restaurant during the day, and at night was sleeping on cardboard anywhere he can find a safe spot nearby. In short, he couldn't find an apartment he can afford that would also accept a convicted felon. Well, his search is now over.
Hi! How you doing? The day I got the key, I was kind of like, I was excited, but at the same time, I was like, is this a dream?
He's in a one-bedroom apartment with the amenities he needs, including a roof.
The first night, it was like in heaven. Then it rained that night. So it felt good to be in here. No more let me go hide behind a bush or let me go look for another building.
Grayson also loves having a closet again.
Oh my Lord. It felt so great.
It makes it much easier to look and feel presentable, something he prioritized even on the streets.
And that's how I've been before I was homeless. That's how I always dressed. So I told myself I'm staying that way.
Nonprofit St. Vincent de Paul Cares helped Grayson get here.
We have housed 2,140 homeless people since the beginning of the pandemic.
CEO Michael Raposa says 175 of those individuals and families are here in Southwest Florida.
We're good at it. It's our specialty. In most instances, over 92%, for the rest of their lives. They never come back to the system if we're successful.
Raposa explains why.
And what we see on the back end of this process is that once we put people into housing, they fight to stay in housing. They never want to go back to the trauma of homelessness. This is not a complicated problem.
But it is a challenging one.
We never competed with the fair market housing. Affordable housing and fair market housing were almost at two completely polar ends of the spectrum. But because of the pressure and the increase in rent, for example, in the fair market housing, many of those people are starting to look at affordable units in affordable neighborhoods where they probably wouldn't have lived before.
St. Vincent's works hard to maintain community relationships in order to preserve affordable rental options.
We can't do this without amazing landlords, willing landlords that are willing to rent at an affordable rate in a time when they could get greedy. Please don't get greedy.
Grayson has a one-year lease and with public assistance pays about $500 a month. With the stable housing, he's now searching for a second job to help him get ahead.
There is a job for everybody.
But the president and CEO of the Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce can't say how many working homeless are employed by local businesses. In December, Colleen DePasquale told me she would reach out to the Chamber's 700-plus members to see what she could find out.
When you and I first talked about this, we did a survey, like, talk to me. Do you have this population working for you. I didn't get any response.
And months later, she doesn't know why.
Who knows, right? You don't know, and I think that that's a big gap that you've made us recognize, that we don't know who's working for us.
While she commits to searching for answers, St. Vincent de Paul's work to help Grayson and others like him continues. Raposa believes divine intervention and our media attention help get the job done.
I believe that you were there on that day with that officer for a purpose, and I think that you helped shine some light on something that is a critical concern in this community. Your presence there was not an accident.
You just gotta have faith, you know, but you just gotta believe in yourself. And if you want something in life, just fight hard for it, you get it.
Grayson was also promoted from dishwasher to working with cold food. He says the people here are like family, and he says they respect him for what matters the most, the man he is now and what he brings to the table, which is a strong work ethic. You can see our entire series on winknews.com and on the Wink News app. In Fort Myers, I'm investigative reporter Celine MacArthur. Wink News now.